What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the overall markets. I'm going to break down some important updates involving President Trump that just came out as he's saying some new things about China, how this is likely going to affect the market going into tomorrow, and what the setups are suggesting, in my personal opinion. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link that's down below, or use my QR code right here to sign up. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100, you're going to get $20 of free Nvidia stock. If you deposit $2,000 or more, you're going to get $50 worth of Nvidia plus a $100 cash reward. Deposits $10,000 or more to get $300 worth of Nvidia plus $100, or deposits $50,000 or more to get $1,000 of free Nvidia stock plus $100. You're also going to qualify for an 8.1% APY non-invested cash. The offer ends very soon, so please use my link down below to sign up. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the markets. So, as far as the market's going, when we look at SPY and the others, as you can tell, we have this head and shoulders like pattern that's been developing for the last couple of months on SPY. But despite this, what we'll see is that for the shorter term, for the last couple of days, SPY has been going back and forth while forming this right shoulder. So we were basically right here around the 670s. We came all the way down towards our red line right here, which is the 200 EMA. We bounced up to the 20 and 50 EMAs. We dropped back down, pushed back up to 670, rejected, pushed back up to 668, rejected. And then we came back down to the red line again, which is where we bounced. So now we're basically just doing this whole like back and forth thing. This is what SPY has been doing for the last couple of days. And there is a chance it might continue to do this for some time. Now, if we break the upper resistance right here at 670, it's possible SPY goes for new all-time highs. But if we lose the red line down here, if we get some kind of rejection, we lose the red line at the 200 EMA, then of course this will likely be dumping towards the 630s to finish this head and shoulders. Now for the short term, I want to make it very clear that for the short term, we have to just focus on steps 1 and 2. We're not going to focus on steps 3, 4, 5, 6, or the later moves. We're just going to focus on one move at a time. And for now, we closed above our key EMAs. We held above them very, very nicely. And SPY looks like it wants to be going a bit higher to try to finish this inverse head and shoulders and push back up towards this resistance right here after what President Trump had said. But even if we pump even more, we could still get a rejection later on, which we will talk about later on. But why is the market pumping, at least for the time being? So there was a lot of good news that came out involving President Trump and Xi Jinping. President Trump had talked about how, with the whole situation involving the US and China, he said that he thinks it's going to be fine with China. He says we have to have a fair deal. It's going to be fair. He made that very, very clear. He also talked about the possibility of once again de-escalating the situation because of the fact that he believes his tariffs are not going to be sustainable at 100%. So President Trump himself said that the 100% tariffs are not sustainable, meaning that he's not going to just impose 100% tariffs forever, but they're going to be just a short-term trade negotiation tactic. He made that very, very clear. And the market loved that news, that we're not going to be imposing super high tariffs on China forever. They're just using this to negotiate for the shorter term. On top of this, President Trump also announced that he's going to be meeting up with Xi Jinping within 2 weeks. He said that explicitly, which is what really helped the market push. So that's been some good news, and this is once again helping the market pump the way it's been. President Trump also stated that, once again, that there was no reason to meet Xi Jinping earlier, and that's why the market was like selling off very hard. But then he changed it, and now he's saying that once again the meeting is going to happen in 2 weeks. So that's like the big transition that's really helping the markets. Simultaneously, President Trump also said that it's not sustainable, but that's what the number is, and they forced me to do it. So he's saying that China forced him to do this because of what's happening with export controls. And then he added again that things will be fine. He thinks things will be fine with China, and we're going to meet in 2 weeks. So that is some good news. Once again, he's saying things are going to be fine. His demeanor is more calm, and the whole situation is now going to be very dependent on this meeting and also with what happens in the next couple of weeks. But this is once again helping the markets bounce the way it's been, excuse me. So with the bounce that's been coming, that is some more good news. President Trump also is saying he's going to be imposing new tariffs on large trucks at about 25% starting on November 1st. The market has already priced this in, I believe, so it should not be too impactful. So far, this is another more neutral piece of news. But with President Trump making those announcements, the market dumped and basically pumped once again. And on the shorter term, SPY also has on the 5 minutes time frame an inverse head and shoulders. So we have a left shoulder, a head, and a right shoulder right over here. If this continues, we could easily start pushing for 668 to 670 for a temporary move up. And then we'll see if you reject off that or not. When it comes to our economic calendar, tomorrow is going to be Monday, October 20th, 2025. In the morning at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the 3 and 6 month bill auctions coming out. Besides that, everything else is going to be more minor. For Tuesday, we have Waller from the Fed giving a speech that may cause some volatility. On Wednesday, it's going to be very, very quiet. There's not really much coming out. On Thursday, it's also going to be more quiet. We do have the Kansas Fed announcing the composite index and the manufacturing index at 11 o'clock a.m. But then there's no initial jobless claims data for now because of the government shutdown. That is delaying lots of data. Finally, on Friday, October 24th, we have CPI data coming out. That could be very, very impactful for the markets, especially since we're expecting a slight increase in all items year over year. So we'll see what that leads to, but do expect some high volatility as we approach Friday. So we're going to start off with the week with very quiet data, which could help the market continue to push, as it's going to be more reactive to what President Trump has been saying. Since what we heard on Friday and yesterday, we haven't gotten any new updates. He's just saying the same things, kind of like alleviating the tension, and that's what we're essentially waiting for. On top of this, when it comes to the government shutdown, unfortunately, it's now stretching to weeks. And this is not the best of news, at least so far. It's been weeks since this started, and the Senate have failed 9 times to pass a spending bill, which passed the House, but it's been very, very difficult. So for now, we're going to have to wait and see what happens with this. This is why data is being delayed. It's also affecting lots of federal workers and millions of Americans. So that is something important to remember. And then finally, the last thing is that this is what the economic calendar looks like. Monday is going to be very quiet, very, very quiet earnings. On Tuesday, we have Coca-Cola and Netflix announcing earnings, which could cause more volatility. On Wednesday, we basically have AT&T in the morning and other communications stocks. And then we have Tesla and IBM announcing earnings after market close. On Thursday, we have American Airlines alongside Intel, and that's pretty much it for now. But Tesla is going to be one of the most important ones, at least for the week, as there's lots of excitement, at least so far. So for the short term, the setup is bullish. SPY has an inverse head and shoulders, which would take us up to that 668 to 670 area. The short term does look more bullish, and this should continue to uptrend for 668 to 670 most likely. But for the medium term, keep in mind that despite the inverse head and shoulders that's forming, there is still a much larger head and shoulders on the 4 hour, and that is still present, which is why we can't be too complacent. We can't just expect this to just break out or get a massive crash. We have to be very, very unbiased about how this ends up developing. So I do think that this is how it's going to go down. If you're really bullish, you want to see us break 670 to get to all-time highs, right? Break 670 and you're bullish. If you're bearish, you want to see us reject near 668 to 670. And then we eventually want to lose 653 in the upcoming days/weeks. If we lose 653, the 630s are coming next. So make sure you remember those levels. For tomorrow, I think we're going to be pushing for 668 to 670 is the most likely possibility and go a little bit higher. But notice that the last time we touched 670, we got this rejection. We touched 668, got a rejection. So we might reject again near 670 if we can't break it. And there is a risk of that potentially happening for another move right back down. So I would warn you to be very, very careful with the way the market's moving. And there is a risk of us kind of like pumping and dumping like this for this head and shoulders to continue to develop. Of course, if we manage to break and hold above 670, we could be going for all-time highs, but the odds do favor us continuing to trade sideways in this range and get a rejection on the SPY chart. I think that's the most likely possibility in my opinion. So could we push tomorrow? Yes. We could be going for 668 to 670 for a temporary pump higher, especially with Tesla likely going to be running because of earnings, which is coming very soon. But then there is a risk of rejection again if we can't break 670. So watch that as a very, very big test. Every time we're touching 670 for the last couple of days, we've rejected near there. So there is a risk of us basically getting another rejection. And that's the most likely possibility. But for now, I can't guarantee that. We have to watch it in real time. The daily does look a bit more bullish, so we're favoring upside by about, another 4 to 6 points, and we'll see if we reject after that. On the QQQ, the same thing's essentially going on, right? We have this left shoulder, a head, and a right shoulder forming, And this would likely take us a lot lower if we get some kind of big rejection and we lose 587. If that fails us, we're looking for a big dump. However, for now, we're looking bullish because on the 5 minutes time frame, we have an inverse head and shoulders. There's a left shoulder, head and right shoulder, which would take us back up towards that 607 to 608 area, and we'll see if we reject off that or not. So I anticipate some upside is very, very likely. We could be going a bit higher, then we'll see if we get some kind of rejection. So we'll see how it goes. Going back to the 4-hour time frame, as we're trying to make higher lows on SPY, we're favoring some upside. I think we go a couple of points higher on the SPY charts, despite this head and shoulders. Could we push more? Yes, 608 to 609. It's possible we go a little higher. Then we're going to see if we end up losing 601 after that for a potential rejection. This is what we could be forming on the QQQ charts. But don't worry about the rejection yet. What we're going to do is watch in real time if we get that rejection. So for now, we're bullish. So I'm just going to play the chart in front of us, and we're favoring a pushback up to 606 to 608 on the QQQ. It looks like we go a bit higher, then we'll see if we reject after that. On the IWM, there might be a hint here as we still have this gap to fill all the way down towards 237. And if that fills, I think there's another gap below. But for now, I think it goes a little higher for 244 to 245. And then we're going to see if we make a lower high and turn back down to fill this gap over here. So please watch that very carefully. There's a good chance it does once again come a little bit lower. That's going to be very important, but watch and see how things end up going. And we're going to be very, very patient. ES has a nice double bottom here. We're actually trying to make a higher low. If we break resistance right here at 67.50, we're going to be looking for all-time highs or very close to them. But if we end up losing 66.70, we're going to be looking for a dump back down. I think that this is going to go a little higher. I don't think we're done yet. As long as 6,700 holds, we're looking for 6,750. And we're going to see if we get a rejection off this or not. But as you can tell, we have a left shoulder, head, and right shoulder. So for now, I think that we go a little bit higher. I think 6750 could be coming on ES, and we're going to see if we get a rejection off that or not. If 6750 breaks, we could be going for all-time highs, but if we don't, we could be looking for another rejection to complete this head and shoulders. So for now, look for some upside. We might be going a little bit higher for 6750 as long as 6700 holds, and we're going to see if we reject off that or not. On NQ, we have a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder. If we break 25,200, we're going to be going even higher to try to break out for all-time highs. But if we reject off 25,200, we could be turning back down. Because we're holding so nicely above 25,000, I think NQ goes a little bit higher for 25,200. And then we're going to see if this is a trap for the bulls, and if we get some kind of rejection or not. Because every time we're touching the low 25,000s, we reject. Every time we hit 24,500, we like to bounce. We're just going back and forth, so we could be turning back down. On Bitcoin, we have this trend line around 112,000. We'll see if we reject here. As you can tell, we're making lower highs, but I think we could be retesting 112,500, and we'll see how it goes. Tesla also has kind of like a head and shoulders like pattern that's been developing, but here's the thing. For the short term, I think we're actually more bullish because we also have an inverse head and shoulders for the short term, and there's a lot of hype with Tesla's deliveries. Tesla ended up beating the all-time high in deliveries amounts, although their margins may not be the best, and EPS is not expected to be as high, but their revenue should be quite good. I think there's a lot of hype with earnings. So I would not be surprised if we slowly creep up for like the 450s, maybe even 460. So 450 and 455 could be tested. Then we're going to see if we actually get a rejection and we end up turning right back down, because this could also be forming sort of like a head and shoulders, at least for now. But there is some temporary upside potential. On Nvda, we're looking a bit more bullish. We have 184 as a resistance. If that breaks, we're looking for the gap fill up here. If we lose 178, we're going to be turning back down. For now, we're favoring some upside for 185, and we'll see if we kind of turn back down from here. But I do think we temporarily go a bit higher on Nvda. We're also forming a flag here, so I would not rule out 186 or so. On Appl, we have a nice accumulation, which could take us a little bit higher for like 255. As long as 249 does not fail us, I could see us kind of like dip and bounce and slowly go for that 255 target, which is where this imbalance is. We also have the support becoming resistance, and we're going to see if we get some kind of rejection. On Netflix, we're making lower highs. As you guys can tell, we also have a sort of like a slanted head and shoulders that's forming. But it depends. You know, this head and shoulders kind of pound out right here. We bounced a bit, and as we approach like the 1250s, we do like to reject. Around 1150, we like to bounce. So I could see us try to push for essentially 1206. Maybe it goes a little bit higher for like 1214. Then we're going to see if we reject off that or not. For MSTR, we have resistance right here at 298 to 300. I think we go a little bit higher for that test, and we'll see if it rejects. For other tickers, we also happen to have Celsius, which is looking for 66. Look for some temporary upside. Supermicro has a double bottom here. Could be retesting the 53.6 area, and we'll see if it rejects. Palantir has resistance at 182, and we'll see if it rejects as well. As you can tell, we're making lower highs, but I see some upside potential for 180 to 182, and we'll see if we turn. We have a nice double bottom on Rivian. We're looking for essentially 13.4, and we'll see if it turns back down. SoFi is favoring 27.25, and we'll see if we turn, but I do see some temporary upside. AMD is on a bit of an uptrend. We're also favoring 240 as our potential targets. ARM is going to be favoring 168, and we'll see if it rejects. Palantir is favoring 68.24 and 69.37 for temporary upside, but it could reject near the 69, so be careful. Coinbase looks more bullish, favoring 342 to 349. I see some temporary upside, and we'll see if it turns. Amazon has a slight divergence. I see a test of 216, but keep in mind it does like to reject off our 20 EMA. If 216 breaks, we're looking for 219, but if it rejects off 216, we turn back down. Either way, I do see it pumping at least 3 points, and we'll see if it turns. Same thing with Meta. We're trying to make higher lows here. We're favoring 720 to 725, and we'll see if it rejects. Google is going to be favoring 257.5, and we'll see if it rejects. And then Microsoft is also going to be favoring like 516, so we'll see how it goes from there. Oracle is also forming like a double bottom here, favoring 297, so we'll just have to see how that goes. And the VIX got a big rejection, looking for the gap fill back down to the low 20s. So I think 19.5 is coming on the VIX, and it's going to be dipping a bit more. As we're seeing, the dollar pushing and might also reject right here near 98.6. So that tells me that SPY and the QQQ likely go a little bit higher, another 3 to 5 points. I could see these pump a little bit more, but keep in mind there's a larger head and shoulders, and that could just be followed by rejection. We could pump a little bit more than get rejected. So please remember that. Also, a big winner to watch for is going to be Tesla for the week. Now, I don't know what's going to happen after Tesla's earnings. We don't know what's going to happen, but typically, leading up to earnings, sometimes you see the share price run. At least most of the time, it runs approaching earnings. So there might be some upside coming to Tesla for like the 450s, 455 to 460 even. But then keep in mind, even if it pumps another 10 to 20 points, even if it pumps a little bit, there's still a left shoulder, head and right shoulder. And if it pumps and dumps, this could still very well just pan out. So don't be too confident in one direction. When I say that, because with earnings, yes, we could pump approaching it, but then you never know what's going to happen after earnings. It could still get a rug pull. It could keep going. We'll have to see. So be very unbiased with Tesla. Just know we are favoring upside approaching earnings. And then after earnings, you never know what's going to happen. And I just want to be very open about that. So as far as the market's going, we look temporarily bullish. Could go a little bit higher on SPY and the QQQ, especially with President Trump's tonality and the fact that he's very open to being a reasonable negotiator. Those are his exact words with this whole situation involving China. And we're going to see what happens with President Trump and any updates that come out. But we'll see what happens, at least with that. For now, we're bullish, and we'll see what happens as we approach these tough resistances. The market does favor some kind of like rejection once we get there, but we'll see just to be safe. All right. So anyways, that's it for this one. Thank you all so much for listening. Please have an awesome rest of your guys' days, and I'll be back very, very soon with another update tomorrow morning before market open. Until then, I wish you all nothing but the best, and peace out.